Hello and welcome to Zalto Live, the podcast featuring Zen Buddhist Monk Claude AnShin Thomas, who will share with you his life experiences that includes not only military combat, personal violence, and addiction, but also healing, transformation, and the ongoing joy of everyday life. Please enjoy listening.
Camilla, do you want us to keep going, or you wanted questions, or how do you want to do it?
Well, we can keep going. We'd like to hear from you all.
Okay.
I tell you, this was the question.
This is a class in Asian thought,
theory?
Asian philosophy, and we began with Hinduism, and we do Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism, and we talk a lot about all that good stuff in the Eastern thought. First part of the semester, is different students, but we do Western thought, and this semester we look to the East. So I thought you would be the perfect person to enlighten us a little further. Now, we certainly would want to hear about your personal experiences, as students are very interested in what it's like to be a Buddhist monk, and why you chose as you did, and what it's brought into your life. So if you would share some of that, we would love it.
Yes. Well, I will say from the beginning that my effort has never been to to copy or to pretend in some way that I was Japanese. I'm ordained in a Japanese lineage. From the beginning, it was always impressed upon me that I was to take what was being given to me and see how it manifested in my life, being born and raised here in the United States. I find what happens a lot in these Buddhist meditation circles is there are too many Westerners attempting to act like they're Asian, and I just think it's a great disservice. It's a great disservice to the teaching that's been passed on to us. I'm born and raised in rural Western Pennsylvania, Northwest Pennsylvania, a small farming community named Waterford. I enlisted in the military at the age of 17. I served in the military for 3 years. A year of that was as a combat soldier in Vietnam. I was injured quite seriously, spent a significant period of time in the hospital. And when I got out of the hospital, the only way, I didn't understand how deeply I had been affected. I didn't understand how wounded I was. Now I'm not talking about physically. And how do I refer to you? Do I refer to you as Professor MacBeaker, or do I refer to you by your first name?
You can just call me by my first name.
All right, great.
We're very informal here at SVL.
Okay, great. So I met Camillo some years back. I was introduced to him through a mutual acquaintance who I've lost contact with for various reasons. But when I read Camillo's the information that this mutual acquaintance shared with us, I had an immediate resonance, because Camillo was writing about moral injury. I've been talking about moral injury. I've been living with it and talking about it for like 40 years. But I didn't have a word, I didn't have a frame for it. I live with the reality of post-traumatic stress, not disorder. I am not disordered. None of us are disordered. We have a natural response to our environment based on what based on our training and how that training played out in our lives, the sort of things we were subjected to, the events we participated in and witnessed. So post-traumatic stress being falling underneath the umbrella, being an aspect of the overarching reality of moral injury. I was conditioned in a particular way to deal with, or rather not deal with, how I was affected by my combat and my war experience, and how I was injured. And the way I was taught to deal with that was to not deal with it, rather avoid it, and to hide it under a blanket of social anesthetics, although the anesthetics I was taking weren't really all that social. I was... in the time that I was in the hospital, I was the way in the surgeries that I had and the pain that I was living with, the pain medication they were giving me was they were giving me narcotic pain medication, and they were giving me synthetic narcotic pain medication. And when they discharged me from the hospital and then subsequently from the military, they never detoxed me. So I was released from hospital and from the military with a serious dependence on narcotics. Also, I had a serious dependence on violence. I saw violence as the primary method of conflict resolution. So if you mix narcotics and violence, that's really not a good mix. My life so there was for me the war after the war. My life post-military was not pretty. I had difficulties. I was unemployable. I had and still have some struggles with authority. I'm cautious. I'm able to deal with it better today than I in the past. But I'm really cautious around. I'm cautious in the ways in which I interact with people who place themselves in authority. I lived on the streets in Pittsburgh. I lived homeless. I lived for 2 years. I was able to come off the streets, and I was able to finish a college degree. So I have a bachelor's degree in education, English education. I have a master's degree in business. And just recently, let's say in the last 5 years, I was given an honorary doctorate in divinity from Moravian College in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where Kenshin and I were guest. What do we call? Paul. We were professors in residence. We were guest scholars there, and actually, I invited Camilo to come by there and do a talk to one of the classes. I came in contact with Buddhist practice. I mean, I was in contact with some kind of with Asian thinking and Asian views of the world from a very young age. So, because I started the study of martial arts when I was 14, I studied and taught martial arts for 27 years, and all of the teachers that I had, I say none of the teachers I had were Western. They were all Asian, and so I had an exposure to a different view of the world through them. But it was around a martial ideology. But still, it had me curious. It stimulated a certain kind of curiosity that had me looking at the world from different angles of perception. It wasn't until I stopped using alcohol and other drugs, and that was in 1983, that I began the process of healing and transformation, understanding that for me, healing is not the absence of suffering. It's learning how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. Through a process, like the first 7 years of not using alcohol or other drugs, I was going through I was experiencing a sort of awakening to how I was affected, what my childhood was like, coming to terms with what my family life was like and how all of that influenced me. And the last piece on that was the war. When the war broke through, I had been already abstinent from alcohol and drugs about 7 years. And when the war broke through, the supports that I was using to help me to not drink or get high weren't enough. And I was in therapy with a social worker who then recommended that I go to a meditation retreat with other combat veterans that was being facilitated by a Buddhist monk. The Buddhist monk was Vietnamese. I'm sure I knew that, but somehow I didn't know that. I went, not because I thought it would be a groovy thing to do. I went I went sort of out of desperation because I didn't want to damage the relationship I had with a social worker because it's the only safe place I had in my life at that time. This would be 1990. So I went to this retreat, and it was, I didn't know it at the time, but I can look back and say it was a life-altering experience. From that retreat, I ended up being invited to go to their monastery, which was in France. I did go to that monastery. I went with the intention to stay for 30 days, and I ended up staying for 3 years. And my life just kept opening up for me and unfolding in ways I couldn't have imagined. Eventually, I left that monastery. I came back to the United States, and I met the person whom I'm currently ordained by. Both of those people, the abbot of the first monastery in France had recently died, and the person who ordained me died some years back. One of the things that was impressed upon me, or I should say one of the things that really impressed me when I met the person I'm ordained by, is he said to me quite clearly, I do not care what you think, I do not care what you believe, and I do not care what you have to say. I care about what you do and how you do it. And that made so much sense to me. And so I invested myself. I did that in the first monastery I lived in too, but I really invested myself in learning the craft of being a Zen Buddhist monk living here in the West. I also studied with another teacher who has since died. I studied the monastic rules, which is unusual for somebody like me who's ordained in the Japanese Zen tradition, which has drifted away from sort of traditional Buddhist practice. But I wanted to really learn all I could learn about Buddhist practice, its histories, its roots. And I can honestly say, without any equivocation, that this practice has helped me to save my life. It did not save my life, because, of course, what I do with what I'm given is what's important. And how my life has unfolded as a result of this is quite interesting to me. I get invited to travel. Before the pandemic, I was traveling between 180 and 260 days a year. I get invited all over the world. But I often get invited into areas of conflict, where there's current fighting or past fighting. Because I have a unique skill set that unfortunately enables me to move around those areas, to feel safe, well, as safe as you can feel. I know my way around a war zone, both as a combatant and as a civilian. And I'm able to carry this practice into those spaces. And it's not about convincing or cajoling or proselytizing. It's how I live my life and the presence that I bring in these circumstances. It's how to be just present. And that's including what's currently going on in the world, because I'm actively involved in that process as well. What I encourage people to do, and I will encourage you to do this, is that, we have to breathe, right? We don't breathe, we die. So why not breathe consciously? Or in the process of making the effort to breathe consciously, see what distracts us from being present, really present. Just because we think we're present doesn't mean we're present. So first thing in the morning when you get up, make your bed like you never slept in it. And then sit 5 minutes. Take the instructions I've given you, find a comfortable place, or just establish a place and sit for 5 minutes, connect with your breath. See what prevents you from connecting with your breath. And then just do it. Do it not to accomplish something. Do it not to gain something. Do it just to do it, but do it. And then carry that, let that follow you into your day, or carry it with you into your day. And the last thing, before you go to bed, repeat the process. Except for making your bed. You don't want to make your bed at night. That's already done in the morning. You want to unmake your bed. Good. Yes, and then sit for 5 minutes. 5. Look, we're talking 10 minutes a day. 10. To just to connect with your breath, connect with that life force which sustains us, and then notice the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that arise in that stillness. One of the things that I have discovered through this process, and I've been living as an ordained monastic for going on 25 years now, is that the answer to all the questions that I have are right there in that stillness that's established through a dedicated application of the instructions I've just passed on to you. I think what I'd like to do now is simply open this up for any question that you might have. Now, please, if you have a question, ask a question. Be as concise as possible. Like, generally, I say 12 words or less. You're an intelligent group of people. I know you couldn't last a semester with Camilo if you weren't, because Camilo, I'm serious. It sounds a little tongue-in-cheek, but the level of respect that I have for Camilo and admiration for how he engages with life and what I've gained from his writings is incomparable. So
thank you. You flatter me.
Oh, please, it's true. So,
by the way, the class knows a little bit of your history. We actually watched Peace is Every Step, and we saw you in there. And we also
you saw me with hair then.
Yeah, we did. And we also know that you're not a name dropper, and that one of your teachers was the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh.
Yeah. Well, and there's a specific reason for my not mentioning people. The way it was, let's say from the 9th century up till about the 14th or 15th century, it was customary for people to not mention who they studied with or who they received empowerments with. That was never brought into light until after they died. And I understand the sense of that. And what I say to people if that come to retreats with me, I do retreats for anybody, and you don't have to become ordained, or you don't have to even declare Buddha. You don't have to do it. You can just come. And I tell people, you have to come because of what you see generated through me and my practice. I don't want you to come to a retreat with me because of an association with somebody else. And so it's okay. I just don't do it by rule. But I have studied with 2 quite prominent teachers. I'm ordained by someone who was quite prominent as well. I just generally don't mention those names for those reasons. But if you have any questions, ask them. Anything, you can ask me anything, but it's short, to the point. And I don't want to get in arguments or debates here. I also want to let you know that I've recently done a podcast I've done several, but this one is of particular interest. It's hosted by a man named Dan Harris, who was for 20 years the anchor of ABC Nightline. He's left network news and he's doing this podcast, and it's internationally it's nationally quite popular, and I think it's internationally known. But there's if you listen to podcasts, if you're interested in that, I'd be glad to share that information with you, or I can give it to Camilo, and Camilo can share it with you. But I think it was a very interesting period of time he and I spent together. So you can ask me any question you want. Just to make your best effort not to ramble.
I already warned them about
Oh, yeah. Yan Hao.
Yeah, I'm here. So I got a question for you. It's
Ask
kind
me.
of it's kind of emo, but yeah, I'll get it short. So how should I live at the present, knowing that I shall die one day and have no idea when that will be? You know.
Now, say that one more time.
So how should I live at the present,
Uh-huh.
knowing that I shall die one day and have no idea when that will be?
Well, that's because you don't know, is why you ought to. You know,
Yeah.
the moment we took the first breath, we already took the last one. We just didn't know when it was going to happen. So I don't really think about, I don't dwell on the fact that at some point this will all end, although logistically I'm getting closer to that than I was. But the truth is, we never know. We operate with this idea that we have a specific period of time that we're going to be alive and involved in whatever we get involved in. But life and death are of supreme importance. If I ignore death, then I'm not actually living in life. But if I only obsess about death, then I'm actually not living in life. So concentrating on the breath, breathing in, knowing that you're breathing in, breathing out, knowing that you're breathing out, you cannot be any place other than the present moment. And so but yeah, I mean, you have to want to do that. I mean, if you want to obsess on death and waste the present moment, that's entirely up to you. But I'm telling you, this present moment business, this is really hot stuff, man. I like it. It's really good. Yeah. Questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Raul, you had a question, I know.
Oh, Raul.
Yeah.
Where's Raul?
Hi.
Oh, okay. Oh, there you are.
So I was wondering, in this day and age where people of my generation are dealing more and more with anxiety, I'm curious to know your thoughts on using meditation or other practices to relieve anxiety, such as intrusive thoughts or like uncertainty about the future.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Really, meditation. This is meditation, not medication. Now, what I can say to you, like I'm of the nature to experience anxiety. I am of the nature to feel sometimes really overwhelmed with the realities that I'm looking at in the world. I'm of the nature. There are sometimes, Raul, when I hate myself. I mean, I really do. I hate myself. Remembering all the things that I have done and wished I would have done different. But the truth is that this is like this. I have the opportunities that I have today because of all of that. Where this is going to go, I have no idea, and it doesn't make any sense to me to dwell on that. What I have is this. So this practice helps me to discover what distracts me from this, and concentrating on the breath helps me to be more present in just this moment, because this is what I have and this is what I can deal with. I can't do anything about the past. I certainly can't do anything about the future because it isn't here yet. However, if I'm living intensely right here in this moment, and the breath is the tool to support me with that, then all things are here. And I have the possibility then to learn how to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. Now, that means that when I have moments of anxiety, I have the most powerful tool at my access, breath awareness. It helps me to be present with my anxiety, to not reject it nor allow it to control me. The same about my fears about like, well, what's going to happen next? I can share with you when in the current circumstance, I'll bring current events into this. The current circumstance in Ukraine, this started long before this invasion. But as soon as this happened, immediately I was brought back to my childhood. And in my childhood, I grew up during this Cold War period, and we had routinely had drills where they were called duck and cover drills, where we had to duck and hide underneath our desks. I mean, as if that would have been any good, you know, in case of nuclear attack. But it brought up all of that anxiety. And really, how to be present with that anxiety, I learned that through time and experience and a commitment to this practice. But if I'm sitting to get rid of this, then I'm destined to be trapped in it. I can also say to you, Raul, that that these feelings, the feelings of anxiety, the more I don't want, let's say, the more I don't want to have them, the tighter the grip they have on me. It's like if I were to step into a pond of quicksand, if I panic and try to struggle to get out, I sink more quickly than if I was able to just relax, stay steady. And I've been told that you can even sort of swim in that stuff. I mean, I don't want to try it out, but that's what I've been told. I do know that this breath awareness is an incredible tool that has supported me in multiple occasions from causing harm to myself or others. Question from the group?
Jessica, you had a question, I know.
Jessica. Okay.
Hello.
There you are. Hi, Jessica.
It's nice to meet you.
Thank you very much.
My question is, how does being a Buddhist impact your daily life and decision making?
Yeah. Let's see. I haven't been in jail in probably 25 years. So that's a positive for me, because I was averaging about once every 6 months, something like that. But that's not only a product of Buddhist studies. It's also about not taking intoxicants. So by not drinking alcohol or taking other drugs, because I'm a drug addict. One's too many, thousands never enough. Because what happens with me, I take one, I take the drug takes the drug, then the drug takes me. And alcohol is that same for me. And so being abstinent from intoxicants, and then that leading me to Buddhist practice, it really supports me. It supports me to be more steady. It supports me. I'm not as reactive as I once was. I attribute that a lot to Buddhist practice. It may also be attributable to my age. I don't want to. I hate to go to that route. You know, oh, you're an older guy. You know, I just practice, because I can still see. There's an example in the one house. The center here in Mary Esther is comprised of 5 houses, and the house where Kenshin and I live, there's a empty property next door, and the grass was out of control, and so I just thought I'd do a neighborly thing, and I cut the grass. And so then the person who owns the house came, and they came over, rang the doorbell, and I answered the door, and they said, "Oh, I noticed something has been done to my property. Do you know anything about that?" And I said, "Oh yes, I cut your grass." And the owner looked at me and said, "Don't ever set foot on my property again." They then called the police, and the police came over and they issued me a no trespass warning. And I will look, the thoughts that I had around that topic, and then I went through a process, because of course I had the possibility to go through a process. And Raul, this is also to your question. And I had a multitude of feelings rising out of this. And those feelings that I had give rise to certain thoughts. And those thoughts and feelings, when they merge, they form perceptions of what action is logically follows. So my thoughts were, I could take my truck and back it up to the fence, and I could hook up my truck to the fence and rip that fence down. Because what I did discover in this process is I had the surveyor come by, and the fence of the adjoining property is a foot onto the property of the house that we stay in. And so I talked with a lawyer, I saw what my circumstances was, but what I understood was that any action I take is an escalation in the conflict. So then what I'm doing is I'm starting the cycle of war, violence, and suffering. And really, what's a foot? It's not a big deal. But I had to go through this process, and I saw myself doing all kinds of things to this house. And I just didn't. And it's because I have a willingness to live at peace with my unpeacefulness. I have a willingness to be present to that unpeacefulness. I have a disciplined practice rooted in breath awareness that helps me to stay steady and not be driven by my thoughts, feelings, or perceptions. And I also have a community around me of people whom I trust that I can talk with. So I can talk through certain things and they'll listen to me. That's also part of this. So that's how, and again, it comes back to what I was initially told by the person who ordained me in this lineage, when they said, I don't care what you think, I don't care what you believe, and I don't care what you have to say, I care what you do. And so I want to wake up to the roots of war, violence, and suffering in me, and I don't want to be the instrument of perpetuating that. Question. Yash.
I wanted to ask you about. Okay. I wanted to ask you. But sometimes in life, I understand that when someone in your family or someone you love dies in an old age, or someone who dies naturally, but how can you accept or move on or even fathom things when someone who you love dies in an age where human beings don't normally die? So when someone dies young and things like that.
All things. One of the root practices of the historical figure Shakyamuni Buddha is the teaching of impermanence. All things that come into existence will pass away. We simply don't know when or under what circumstances. When people are of the nature to die, even if their life was taken from them by someone else. I have to ask myself. All right. So I'm a veteran of the United States military. Today, between 17 and 22 former soldiers kill themselves every day. They die of suicide. And that will also now extend into the active military. What a waste. Rather than dwell on what I can't do, there's nothing I can do to prevent that. But what I can do is pay attention to how I'm affected by that loss and how I live my life. So how I'm affected by that loss brings me in contact with certain ideas, certain thoughts and feelings. And this living a life rooted in meditation. And meditation and daily life aren't two things, by the way. So sitting that we did, that's only a form of meditation. And meditation and daily life are not two things. So how to bring that attention into everything that I do. So how do I live my life in a way to honor them? So as I heal, I heal for all those who don't have the capacity to heal, or haven't had the privilege to heal, or haven't had the ability to heal. I see it around me all the time. And I come back to something I said earlier. I have to really want to live differently. I've got to want to live in a different relation with all of this. For me to... I don't know that there is any premature death. Death happens when it happens. And to be able to accept, okay, death happens when it happens. To feel the feelings that are connected with that, and see what lessons that has to teach me about my own relationship to death, and know that at any given moment, I can die. So to work with this topic of death is really important to the process of living. And there's no pat answer to your question. It rests in my willingness to learn from this process, to see how it supports me and benefits me, and to live my life, to honor those people who have died. Question?
Jenna, you had a question?
Jenna. Okay, Jenna, where are you?
Hi. You're talking about me, right?
Where's Jenna? Wave your hand.
Hi.
You.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
I wanted to know what your thoughts were about the current situation of the world right now, because as you know, there's a war going on.
Oh, not just one. Where? Oh yeah, there you go. And there's not just one, Jenna. Yes, there's fighting going on in Ukraine, and we're intensely focused on that. But they're still fighting in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. They're still fighting in Yemen. And they're still fighting and there's fighting going on in various parts of the world. Here in the United States, we kill between 33 and 35,000 people every year with handguns. I looked at the newspaper the other day. I read a series of newspapers every morning. I read them online. And I opened up one of the newspapers I read, and the headline was, 1 killed, 27 wounded in a random shooting at a car show in Arkansas. This is happening all the time. The way I live out loud. I'm not shy about my positions, that violence under any circumstances is not a solution. That violence only gets more violence. Anger only breeds more anger. Hatred only breeds more hatred. What helps me in these circumstances is, rather than focusing so much on what is going on out there, which I have absolutely no control over, is what does what's going on out there bring me in contact with? So to be willing to wake up to the roots of war, violence, and suffering in me. And if you think you don't have any of that, then you need to look more deeply. Because that roots of war, violence, and suffering, we all have that. And if there's any way that I can support you through that process, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm easily discoverable. You have the website that has my email address. You can reach me. I respond to my emails. I'm glad to be of support in any way I can. That's what can I do right now in this sphere to wake up to the cycle of suffering, and what can I do in my immediate environment to address the suffering that's in my immediate environment. Now, for me, the Zalto Foundation it's an international foundation now, and so we have a large contingency in Europe, and people in some major cities in Europe. We also have contact with 2 Zen communities in the Ukraine, and so we're doing what we can do. But I don't assume that I know what needs to be done, because as I've also said, helping can be one of the most egregious forms of violence. My ideas of what somebody needs, it may not necessarily be what they need. And so we're in contact with people as we can be. We're looking at what is needed and what we can do to support that. So I'm in many of the places that I just talked about, we have an active engagement in that. Questions? Yeah. And you can start every morning.
I have a question.
Just a moment. You can start every morning with 5 minutes of sitting, and you can finish every evening with 5 minutes of sitting. Sitting just to sit. So somebody said they have a question.
Yeah.
Yishan.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, what is the ultimate peace?
What's what?
I didn't hear the beginning.
What's that? Ask me one more time, please.
Okay. So, what is the automated peace?
What's the ordinated peace?
Automated?
Automated.
Automated?
Ultimate.
Ultimate. There isn't an ultimate peace. Peace is an organic process. So there's a lot of ideas about what peace has. Buddhist practice is an invitation to us to wake up to the truth that exists beyond our intellect. The truth that exists in this, what they define in Buddhist circles as the absolute realm. So peace is not a static concept. As long as the moment I lock onto peace as a static concept, then that is not peace. That's really the roots of war, because then I'm attempting to impose some static concept or idea onto the reality, and that just causes suffering. So if I commit myself, in my case, I commit myself to the precepts I've taken. If I commit myself to that, not dogmatically, but if I commit myself to these precepts and see how they manifest themselves, how they support me in living differently, then I begin to experience peace. And it shows itself differently in different circumstances all the time. No ultimate peace. Question? Yes, Natalia. Natalie?
Yeah, hi.
Hi. Is it Natalie?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think I can find another way to word this question. Why is meditation so difficult sometimes, even when you want to meditate? Why is it so difficult?
That's because you have too many ideas about it. Yeah?
Oh.
Really, you have too many ideas about it. Look, if you just sit, look, right now, are you breathing or not breathing?
Yes,
Yes, what?
I'm breathing.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. You got to breathe, right? 5 minutes.
Mhm.
All you have to do is sit down. People have too many ideas about what meditation is, what they're supposed to mean, what you're supposed to get, la, 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 la. It goes endlessly. If you just follow the simple instructions I gave. First thing in the morning, you make your bed, sit for 5 minutes. Just do it. No matter what your mind tells you, watch what your mind will tell you. For example, yesterday I did a small pilgrimage. I walked 8.5 miles. From where I'm at to a neighboring town. And what I get to do is I get to watch how my mind works. My mind comes up, says, well, I have another veteran who's staying here for a couple of days. And I thought, well, my mind goes, well, you don't have to walk today. When they arrive, you could this would be a way to communicate practice to them, and you could walk together, and la, la, la. My mind is constantly, I just said, I have a commitment to do this today, and I'm just going to do it. So I just do it. But I do it in relationship with the resistance to do it.
May I also say something?
Yes, Kensha would like to say something too.
Because I just smiled because I also know that place of the difficulty of doing it. And what I've found with myself is that this sitting in silence is very intimate. So you get into a lot of intimate contact with yourself, and sometimes that's uncomfortable, especially since life is so often offering so many distractions. If you look at your life, and I think it's probably true for all of you, it's definitely true also in my life, if I don't make that happen, there is very little silence. Especially now with having devices, even if you, let's say you wait, I don't even know if anyone goes by public transportation, but let's say you have to wait somewhere. even in the grocery store, in line, usually we already have something in our hand, we're doing something. So it's seldomly that we are just there, just not doing anything in particular, just there, observing, using the breath to be more present. And because it's so unusual, I think that's why it's also more intimidating. So it takes some desire to wanting to be there with yourself. I mean, I have to have that desire to be with myself in order to do those minimum like 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening.
Question.
Jenna, you had a question, I know.
Another one.
This is Janet. Vopat.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
Can you hear us, Jenna?
No, she's muted. You have to unmute, Jenna.
Sorry, sorry. I
That's
forgot
okay.
I was muted. So before I was listening to your audios, I went to your website and looked around a little bit, and so I noticed that you have practicing communities in many places, like other than the U.S. And so I was wondering if there are any places that you hope to expand to, and if so, which places?
So you have other places where you practice and offer meditation. I didn't get the question. You said if there was another place where...
If which other places, if you did want to expand to other places around the world, where would you want to expand?
Oh, okay. I have no desire to expand. None.
That's understandable. That's okay.
Yes, I have no desire to expand. However, if I receive an invitation, then I will go there. And it really, let's say I get contact from somebody in Kazakhstan, and I establish this is just arbitrary, and so I establish a relation with them, and they're quite interested and dedicated, and they really want to live differently. And they're willing to follow certain guidelines, then I will encourage them, if there's not a meditation group in their region, to start one. And then I offer my support to them. And then if it grows and they want to establish a stronger connection with the Zalto Foundation, they can, but that's not dependent on my providing them support. So I'm willing to go virtually anywhere. However, that is dependent upon invitations. I must be invited. If I'm not invited, I don't go out and cultivate. If I'm not invited, I don't go.
Thank you.
So James has this
Okay, James.
In your opinion, what can atheists with no belief in a God or spiritual presence learn from Buddhism and its practices?
Sure. I'm not a God guy. And that's a great thing for me. And Buddhist practice is great for me. Now, in Buddhist circles, they have God realms. And I don't want to get into a lot of discussion about all of that. But the God realms, Buddhist practice doesn't advocate a God creator. It doesn't advocate a supreme being. In fact, the person Shakyamuni, who's you see sitting right behind in the middle there, these icons are not, we don't worship these icons. These icons are representing qualities of our own existence that we can expand or that we attempt to to pay attention to nurture, and to develop. Like I said, but the thing that drew me to Buddhist practice, I didn't have to believe anything. And that was just great for me. I didn't have to believe in anything nor not believe in anything. I was given a set of instructions. All I had to do was follow those instructions. And that was okay because they weren't asking me to violate any ethical or moral principles. And so they said, just do this stuff and see what happens. I said, okay. Because I knew at any point in time, if I didn't want to do it, I could just stop. So I find Buddhist practice for me to be very empowering. And again, there isn't a creation story here. In Buddhist teachings, what exists now has always existed. It's just been in a perpetual state of transformation. And so it's not existed like this, but it has. Life has always existed, and life will always exist. It's just in a perpetual state of transformation, and the suffering comes when we attempt to lock a particular form of existence and hold that absolutely, because it won't. This is the same with the question about death. All things that come into existence will pass away, and that I think that it oughtn't to pass away is the source of suffering. Or I think that the passing away is unfair as a source of suffering. Let's see.
I think Sean had a question.
Sean?
Sean, are you still around? Sean, got your camera off?
Yash is there.
Oh yeah, Yash has another question.
Oh, okay. Turn your camera on, Yash.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's just something. I had a question about how important is vegetarianism and veganism to you and to different thoughts of Buddhism.
There are several important texts to study in Buddhist in Buddhist practice. And each of these texts build on one another. So the essential text is the Dhammapada. That's where the very foundations of Buddhist practice are laid out. Then there's the Heart Sutra, then the Diamond Sutra, then the Lankavatara Sutra, and then the Avatamsaka Sutra. Then there is the Platform Sutra, which grew out of China. In the Lankavatara Sutra, it's stated quite clearly, it's written there quite clearly, that the first precept in Buddhist practice, which is don't kill, applies to the way in which we live our lives, the way in which we eat. Now, I don't identify myself as a vegetarian or a vegan. I don't identify myself by a particular label, but I can tell you that I don't eat any meat, fish, or poultry. I don't use, predominantly I don't use any dairy products, and I do this out of a sense of the first precept, which is to not kill or not support institutions of killing. And there are within the literature, the literature is evolutionary. So when you get to the Lankavatara Sutra, then it's very specific, because in the beginning sutras, it's written that Shakyamuni prescribed that you could eat certain meats at certain times. But in the Lankavatara Sutra, it was clearly written that Shakyamuni was supposed to have taught that I'm now telling you that do not eat meat, fish, do not eat meat, living creatures of any kind, because it's like eating your children, and who wants to eat their children? If I had it in front of me, I could read it to you, but I'm not likely to do that. So I think, is it important or not important? I think for me it was, I was already living like that, but for me it was important not because of the label of it, but because of the desire to live differently in the world. Sean.
Half an hour.
Oh.
You're good.
You there, Sean?
Go ahead.
Oh, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Something happened with your audio.
You are
Better
unmuted.
now?
Ah, there you go.
Okay. So my question was kind of answered, but when you first started on this path, did you have a goal? And if you did you achieve that goal?
Yeah. No, I did not have a goal, and so therefore I have achieved it. Yes. No, really, I didn't have a goal. It's been an interesting thing for me. A lot of people come to Buddhist practice with looking for something. Really, I really wasn't looking for anything. I was just sort of following my instincts at that time. And so my life has simply evolved in this way. Yeah, no goals. No, I have plans, but I never plan the results of those plans. Questions? Yes, Natalie.
So prior to the pandemic and after the start of the pandemic, did you notice a difference in why people sought out your help with retreats and exercises and stuff like that?
Well, Natalie, I don't think they sought out my help. I think that what happened is that I suddenly had more regular access to folks because everything went online. So people that I might meet once a year, I was now meeting them once, twice, 3 times a week because we could meet online. That's one of the amazing possibilities that the internet offers us. I'm really thankful for Zoom and all that it's all the opportunities it has presented to us, or other online meeting forums. I will say that my life actually got busier during the pandemic than it was before because I had so much access in this sort of way. Like in the past, Camilla had wanted me to come in the past, but to organize the time and to show up and the transportation and all of that, and it was just complicated and challenging. But like this, boom, here we are. Yeah, this is great. It's just great. Yeah.
It is.
Questions? Oh yeah. Yan Hao.
Okay, so this question is a little bit personal. So
well, ask me.
My parents divorced after I entered college, but they still got a kind of bad relationship between them because of those kind of property assessment, as financial things. But so I'm kind of frustrated about this. So how can I achieve the inner tranquility in this kind of situation?
You have to want to. Yeah, if you don't want to, it's not going to happen. I mean, when I talk about wanting to, it's not sort of like, oh yeah, I really want to. I mean, it's the wanting is something not intellectual. So in Buddhist practice, we are introduced to 2 coexisting realms, the relative and the absolute realm. The relative realm is the realm of the intellect, right, wrong, yes, no, good, bad, of opposites. The absolute realm is that realm that exists beyond the intellect. It's the realm of absolute truth. So we can have any sort of idea we want. I usually do a rather visceral visceral demonstration of this, but it works better when we're in person than online. I'll just use the example of gravity. So you can have all sorts of ideas and theories about gravity, right? And you can argue those theories and ideas. However, if I take you up to the 12th floor, we go up on the roof, we walk off to the edge of the roof, and you step off the edge, you're going to find out the truth of gravity. It doesn't matter what you think about it. It doesn't matter what your theories are. The truth of gravity is what it is. It's not up for debate. The only time it becomes different is when we leave this sphere. Now, I have to want to I have to really want to live differently with the frustrations and the fears and the anxieties, and I have to want to really live in I have to want to establish a different relation with them. But the wanting can't be an intellectual one. It might start there, but it has to go more deeply in that, and that's where practice has supported me. To understand that my problems are not external, nor are my solutions. How I react to externals, that's the issue. And that's what I can work with. And that's how meditation supports me. The breath awareness. Question?
Raul, do you have another question?
Raul. Where's
Yes,
Raul?
hi.
Wait, hold on. I'm looking for Raul. Oh yeah, Raul, there you are.
So, I read that Buddhism sort of has a sort of focus on compassion towards others. I'm curious to know your thoughts on how one can be compassionate towards a person who has done you harm in some way.
Well, first off, there's a difference between the truth of compassion and the idea of it. And so when I read something and it says it has its roots in compassion, I have all sorts of ideas about what that means. Compassion, like peace, is not a static concept. It's a very organic concept, and it shows itself differently in different circumstances. I cannot in any way be compassionate to others if I don't understand how to be compassionate towards myself. So, someone who's done harm to me, I have to look at how I've done harm to others. Yeah? And if I'm willing to look at how I've done harm to others, and willing to wake up to the conditioning that's led to that, if I'm willing to wake up to the ways in which I excuse that or avoid that, the harm that I've caused others, when I'm more conscious of the harm that I've caused, when I'm more willing to be conscious of the harm that I've caused others and work with not doing that anymore, then people who have done harm to me, maybe they haven't done harm to me. Maybe it's just my idea. They didn't do what I want them to do, so it feels like harm to me. So I'm able to have a different relation with these experiences, to look at them from different angles of perception. Yeah? But again, and it comes back to the question I just responded to before this, from Yan Hao. You have to really want to live differently. If you don't, nothing's going to change. Okay, I'm going to say last question.
Jenny, you had a question that I found interesting about Anshin's service in the military, whether he had any regrets about that. Would you ask him that? Where is she?
She's there.
Yeah, I was just like what you said. I was just wondering if you ever regretted joining the army. I know that you kind of didn't have much of a choice, but I just wanted to know if you ever regretted it.
There was a time when I would answer that question by saying yes. However, today my response would be, I have the opportunities that I have today to be of service, Raul, in the world because of the totality of my experiences. So what I used to perceive as my greatest liability, which was my military service, has actually turned into one of my greatest assets, because it's given me a glimpse into my own suffering and what I am capable of doing. When I had regrets, it's because I was looking at external circumstances as being my problems, and I was looking at external circumstances as being my solution. With Buddhist practice, I was able to bring the focus back to self and realize that while external circumstances can be problematic, the solution is always with me. And to realize that, yes, I have deep regret for a lot of lot of the things that I have deep regret for a lot of the things I've done in war, and for the lives I've been responsible for taking, for the buildings I've been for the villages I've been responsible for attacking and destroying. I have a lot of regret. However, to be able to live with that regret without attaching or avoiding, and allow that regret to inform me, that's really at the heart of a spiritual practice. There's nothing I can do to change any of that. That was like, this is like this because that was like that. Now, how I live with this right now, and as this is, and that will become. So there was a question about past and future. That is like, this is like this because that was like that. So the past influences or shapes my existence now. How I live with my existence now then shapes how I engage, shapes how the future will unfold for me. So to live really committed, disciplined to be as present as I can be in the present, in this moment. Because that's all that exists is this moment. Nothing else exists. It doesn't. Only this moment. And when I say it's already gone. So the desire to live present in the moment. This is what drives me. So that I have a chance. This is something that I learned in the first monastery I lived. As I heal, and healing isn't the absence of something. It's learning to establish a more conscious and different relation with that something, whatever it is. As I heal my mother and father in me. I heal all the past generations that live in me. I am a composite of them, that endless stream of family generations back through space and time. As I heal for the collective of which I'm a part of. That's the society and culture and the instruments of society, or the agencies of society and culture. So I am not powerless. I have an incredible opportunity presented to me if I'm just willing to take advantage of it. And the silence that is cultivated through a disciplined spiritual practice rooted in self-reflection. Remember, meditation is in daily life aren't two things. Meditation is sitting meditation is simply a form. So Natalie, when you wake up, or before you go to bed tonight, 5 minutes. Just sit for 5 minutes. Connect with your breath. And then Jenna, when you wake up in the morning, first thing you do, make your bed. Sit for 5 minutes. And then Rahul, when you go to bed tomorrow night, before you do anything, sit for 5 minutes. Really just cultivate that relation with your breath. Doris, when you wake up in the morning, make your bed like you never slept in it and sit for 5 minutes. Just do that. Just sit for 5 minutes. Connect with your breath. You can set a timer. If you find 5 minutes challenging, then do 10 cycles of breath like we just did. There's nothing more important. It's life-altering and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. You just do it. Natalie, just do it. Right? No matter what your mind tells you, just do it. Do it every day for 30 days. Yeah? Or, as somebody told me once, said, just do it until you want to do it. I went, okay. Well, listen, it's time for me to bring this to a transition point. I really want to thank you all for your questions.
Thank you for listening to this episode on Zalto Live. If you would like additional information, please look at the show notes or visit zaltho.org. That's ZALTHO.org. Our work is made possible solely through donations, so please consider making a tax-deductible gift on our website. We wish you well and thank you.